This video is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc. With free weekly content and free shipping over $100, you can save 5% site-wide by using the promo code MTGMudsta. I'm also sponsored by Face to Face Games, Canada's premier Magic the Gathering store. Using the promo code MTGMudsta will get you 5% off site-wide, with eligible orders getting free shipping Canada-wide. If you're looking for a direct way to help the channel, please consider joining my Patreon and becoming a member of the generic Goblin Gang. Hey gang, and welcome back. Today's game was filmed in my studio, with Nick bringing back Kosei, Penitent Warlord. He wants to gear up, enchant, and put a counter onto his commander and smash face and draw a lot of cards. MJ is playing Acererak the Archlich, which is a mono black deck trying to delve through some dungeons. I am playing Krark and Tymna, which is actually my Vial Smasher and Tymna deck, and I'm hoping to copy some Mardu spells and do some big combos. Last but not least, Max is playing Atraxa, which frankly could be anything at this point, but I believe the purpose of it is to proliferate counters on weird things. MJ wins the die roll and starts us off. They play a Snow-Covered Swamp, passing. I play a Temple of Triumph, scrying 1, and passing. Max draws and plays a Sunken Hollow. Nick draws and plays a Forest and taps it for a Llanowar Elves. MJ has another Swamp for turn and passes after that. I play a Blood Crypt and tap 1 white for Weathered Wayfarer. Max draws and plays Savannah. He casts an Azorius Signet before passing to Nick. Nick draws and plays a Ghost Quarter. He's then got enough for Kosei and passes after that. MJ plays a Swamp and casts a Cloud Key, naming creatures it comes in, and passes turn. I have a Plains and cast By Force where X is 2, targeting the Azorius Signet and Cloud Key to destroy, and I pass after that. Max plays a Swamp and casts a Rootweaver Druid. However, none of us take him up on it, and he's stuck with a sad 2-1 and passes turn. Nick plays a Rogue's Passage, and then casts Sword of the Anime, equipping it onto Kosei. Moving to combat, he swings at me for 1 commander damage, which I take, and gets to grab a Forest at the same time, and passes after that. MJ draws and plays another Swamp. They then pay 6 life to cast Keurig, and passes. I draw and play an Urborg, and ramp it up with a Chromatic Lantern, and then tap more mana for an Orzhov Signet, shipping the turn to Max. Max draws and plays a Breeding Pool untapped, and takes 2. He casts a Crystal Shard, and then activates it, and targets Kosei. Nick can't pay for it, and Kosei gets bounced back to Nick's hand, and Max then passes turn. Nick draws and plays a Forest. He recasts Kosei, and then equips the Sword of the Anime to the Llanowar Elves, and goes to combat. He swings it at Max for 2 in retaliation, who takes the hit while Nick goes to find a Forest to put into play tapped. After that, he passes. MJ draws and plays a Cabal Coffers. They activate it, making 4 black mana, and then cast Acererak, paying 2 life to help reduce the cost with Keurig's ability. They venture into the Dungeons of the Mad Mage to gain 1 life, and has to bounce Acererak back to hand. They then cast him again, scrying 1 this time as they move further into the Dungeon of the Mad Mage. MJ then does this 1 more time, making a treasure token, and then sacrifices the treasure and pays 4 life to cast Death Baron. Going to combat, MJ recoups some of their life by swinging Keurig at me, and deals 6, and gains 6 from lifelink, and passes. I draw, and in my main phase, activate the Weathered Wayfarer, going to grab my own Cabal Coffers. I then play it, and activate it for 5 black mana, and use some of it to help cast Krark. I then move to cast a Cathartic Reunion. However, luck is not on my side, as I lose the coin toss, well, in this case dice roll, and have to bounce it back to hand. I then try again with Beseech the Queen, and this time win, getting to tutor for a Mana Geyser and a Jeska's Will. After that, I pass to Max. Max draws and plays a Vault of the Champions. He then activates the Crystal Shard, and this time targets Kirix. MJ can't pay the 1, and the creature gets bounced back to their hand. Max then follows up by casting Atraxa and passing. Nick draws and plays a Forest. He then uses Ghost Quarter on my Urborg to power down the Cabal coffers. He then equips the sword to Kosei and swings at me for 1. He gets to go and find a forest first, and I don't block and take another 1. After that, Nick passes. MJ draws and plays a Phyrexian Tower. They activate the coffers again for 4 and replay Kirix, paying 6 life again to the Phyrexian mana cost. They then recast Acererak for some Phyrexian mana as well, and as they move further into the dungeon, MJ scries 2 and passes to me after that. I draw and play a Reliquary Tower before following up with a Mana Geyser. I unfortunately lose the coin flick off Krark as expected and have to bounce it back to my hand. I then try for a Jeska's Will and lose that flip as well. Having basically skipped my turn, I pass to Max. Max draws and plays an untapped Overgrown Tomb, taking 2, and then casts Springs of Brighthearth. Going to combat, Max swings Atraxa at Nick, and Nick responds with a Ruinous Intrusion and targets the rings. Max responds by activating Crystal Shard and copying the ability with the rings, and aiming both targets at Kosei to bounce it. The rings then get exiled, and Nick gets 3 +1/+1 counters on his Llanowar Elves. Atraxa then connects, and with all that, Max passes and is nice enough to proliferate Nick's Llanowar Elves. Nick draws and casts 3 visits in his main phase for another forest. And then once more casts Kosei. He then equips the Llanowar Elves with the sword once more, and moving to combat, swings it at me for 6. Nick grabs a forest from the on attack trigger, and I take the hit, and Nick then passes. MJ draws and plays an Unholy Grotto, and then casts a Jet Medallion. They then pay 6 life to help cast Bolas' Citadel, and then cast Bone Miser off the top, paying 5 life. They then pay 3 more life to cast Lord of the Undead off the top, and then 3 more for an Oubliette, which as it comes in, faces out Atraxa. MJ then plays Acererak for another 2 life, and exiles their top 2 cards of their library as they move to the Runestone Caverns of the Dungeon of the Mad Mage, and cast Sol Ring from them. MJ then casts a Yara off the top, losing another 3 more and dropping a 1, and then gains 1 life from a Yara's trigger, effectively doubling their life as they go up to 2. And then sacrifice Death Baron to the Phyrexian Tower. This helps them cast a Grey Merchant of Asphodel from hand, and as it enters, each of MJ's opponents lose 17, while they gain a ridiculous 52, including the Yara triggers. MJ then follows up with Aetherax once more with some Phyrexian mana, and scries 3, and deals 1 to each of us. They then play a Gravecrawler off the top, and follow up by casting Murderous Rider's Swift End to kill the Rootweaver Druid. Next up is a Sheoldred with Spring 1 off the top, and then a Carnival of Souls. MJ then goes to combat and swings Kirix at Max to regain even more life. And in their post-combat main phase, cast Darkness off the top to dig a little bit deeper. To finish off Max and I, MJ then activates Bolas' Citadel, sacrificing 10 permanents and dealing 10 to each of their opponents. After that massive turn, they pass it to Nick. Nick sacrifices his Llanowar Elves to Sheoldred and then draws her turn. Unfortunately, having no fog or creatures to stop MJ's next attack, Nick knows when he's dead to Sheoldred and scoops it up. Game review time. So going into this game, I knew that Aceract was a pretty heavy combo deck since MJ has won with him before, using crazy bounce lines and cost reductions to allow them to cycle Aceract over and over again and complete dungeons until they win, either through drains like Ayara and other things like that. We saw a little bit of that with Ayara near the end, but it was pretty sweet to see them take out 2 players as bold as Citadel. Nick's Kosei deck wasn't nearly as explosive as that other one where he just punched us all to death early on, but I think that was mostly due to the fact that he couldn't really gear up his commander since Max kept bouncing his commander back to hand. We really didn't get to see what Max's Atraxa deck did at all. There were no counters outside of ones on Nick's creatures, and the only proliferate was on that Llanowar Elves. This game is what made me really rethink having Krark as my commander as opposed to Vile Smasher. I'm pretty much all but set on having them switch back again since losing out on those Mana Geysers and Jessica's Wills just felt so bad. Because it means that I'll have to cut cards that I want to use normally. This video wouldn't be possible without the help from my sponsors, Cool Stuff Inc., Multizone, Original Magic Art, and Alter Sleeves. But it definitely wouldn't be possible without the help from you, the viewers, and my patrons. So I just want to say thank you for watching, and to remember, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.